Hey guys, it's Mouth here once again, and today I want to talk about the new League Synthesis. And no, don't worry, I don't really get it either. I mean, I get it, like, after studying a ZiggyD video and playing around with it a lot and trying my best to understand it with thousands of people watching, and I get it. But I don't really get it. Like, I don't understand entirely what's happening, why I'm doing this, or what the exact motivation behind it is. It does, all in all, feel like probably the first piece of content that's like side content to the game that just doesn't really feel worth engaging with because of what you get out of it and what you have to put into it, which for me is basically too much work. Path of Exile right now, as you all know for me, is a job, and it feels like I'm at a second job while at my job trying to figure this shit out and trying to make it a min-max and some sort of worth doing. Now let me preface this entire video by stating I am still having a lot of fun with the game right now. The past week since Synthesis has come out has been immensely fun for me because my character is great. I've got a lot of other content to do, and you know, every now and again it is kind of fun to go through the memory stuff, the Nexus stuff. There's still plenty of stuff to kill. It just doesn't really make sense in any sort of way, I don't think. I have put in a lot of hours, like 8 to 10 hours every day happily, and I still want to keep going with my character. I'm still really thoroughly enjoying the game because there is enough for me to do without this synthesis mechanic, and basically just still enjoy the core game as it were at this point. But the mechanic itself has been somewhat of a buggy mess for the past week, and on top of that, even when you get it all completely right and try and do your best to actually nail the mechanic to a T, it doesn't feel like it's giving you all that much compared to what else you could be doing, and you a lot of the time are left wondering, did I do that the best possible way? Is something wrong here? What is happening? Why am I doing this? And the actual crafting mechanic at the end of the day, the whole fractured mods and then synthesizing them and stuff, just doesn't seem like it's intuitive or worth it enough unless you're truly studying this sort of spreadsheet thing outside of the game and really buying all sorts of synthesis or fractured rather mods on items and trying to combine the best possible shit. Basically, if you're solo self-found in this league, I don't think you'll ever engage with the synthesizer in any meaningful way for new crafting bases. It just does not seem like it's going to happen because it's too convoluted a system, and it's also too hard to study up on exactly what you're supposed to do with all that shit. So I do want to talk about basically what the system is if you're not too familiar with how it's going to work and the best sort of returns you can get out of using it, and then the problems and kind of the problems with this league mechanic, I'd say. Now, like I said, I'm still having a lot of fun. It's just not entirely Nexus related. It's because I am playing a new skill. There is still plenty of content, and it is still very worth engaging with. I think this entire league itself is still pretty damn fun, similar to how Betrayal has functioned. Putting all the content in together with the new master system and everything like that into the new Betrayal League made that the main focus of the league, and then the Betrayal stuff was kind of a side bit for me. Same here, there's still lots of delve, incursion, some betrayal, let's just say, not too much at the moment, and then new skills and all that have made the game still really fun, and I'm still really loving this. But the Nexus mechanic, at this point, it's basically best to just be running maps, I think, and then occasionally do the whatever's popping up, a Cavis or a Zana, showing you a little fractured zone, a little memory fragment, run through it, collect some loot. It's kind of like a small breach, basically, right? But the Nexus itself, if you really try and engage with it, what you have to do is basically build an entire layer of all of this shit before it starts becoming anything. So you have to give it a chance to actually connect all these memory fragments to try and build up a bunch of different rewards on your memory nodes. And at that point, once you've established enough of a base, it becomes kind of a system that can flow a bit and become more rewarding. But your first, let's say, I don't know, 90, 92 levels in this character or into this league game just won't feel like anything because you're just trying to connect little memory nodes. You're trying to go towards these memory things and connect them together and get rewards. And it's going to feel very, very weird. Now, if you haven't studied ZiggyD's video like very in depth, You probably should if you want to actually understand any of this league mechanic, because he goes over it pretty well. But the problem is that we have to study a Ziggity video part-time while he studies synthesis full-time to try and understand anything good about it, and that by itself is already kind of a big fail, I think, because I have played this game for thousands of hours, like 10,000 plus hours, right? And this league mechanic left me thinking, what the fuck am I doing here? I have no idea. I watched his video, I'm like, okay, I get it a bit more, and then I was still not really getting it because it didn't feel right. It didn't feel like I was getting enough out of it, even though I did do what he basically told me to do and what we figured out was the best stuff to do, because there was a lot of bugs, a lot of stuff, you know, just would crash. You wouldn't be able to go back to your Nexus. You wouldn't be able to actually like function in the Nexus and get the most out of your rewards. Now that all of that is fixed, it does make a bit more sense, a bit easier to navigate, but it is still very weird. So too long didn't watch the video of his. If you want to know, basically you are supposed to be connecting towards these memory nodes with your various memories and replacing the paths behind you so that things stay connected. So let's say I run this one over here. It's only got one sort of fragment in there. It will decay after running it. If I run it and then get to the next one, I want to replace this one so that the bridge is still connected. You have to turn around. You then have to manually connect it again and then keep going, and so on and so forth until you hit up one of these memories. And hopefully, if everything is still connected, once you get this memory modifier, it will affect every other memory modifier or every other memory connected, and thus give you bigger rewards. So if everything is connected while this memory modifier is activated, then everything gets an additional sort of map mod onto it that makes it more worth running. And the more you do that, the more you're branching out to other memory modifiers and running zones that you've already buffed so that they become kind of cool. And ultimately, you get a bit of extra currency out of it usually. Currently, the best thing I've had is the Breach Splinter mod. It can drop anywhere from like 2 to 5 Breach Splinters whenever it does happen. And for the most part, once I get that mod, I think I will generate 1 or 2 additional Breach Stones per Breach Splinter or Lord area, and that becomes somewhat rewarding. The rest for me so far that I've come across hasn't been too much of anything and isn't very interesting really at all. But like I said, you really need to establish this base for your characters before you actually start feeling like the system's working for you or it's actually doing anything. The problem is it takes a while to establish that base, and it is very clunky to use. It is very unintuitive to play around with, and just not very fun, long story short, because you're going to these memory modifiers, you are having to have the exact specific stuff ready to place in behind you while having the exact stuff ready to place in front of you. You then have to make sure you are porting in and out of your Nexus, you're going through your little waypoints, you're collecting loot, you're coming back selling stuff, you're coming back to your Nexus, you're then hoping that it actually works out. And currently, after the system is all fixed and all that, it still fucks you over plenty of the times. Like I was trying to branch out to this boss because it got really annoyingly put over here, right? Which is just a random spawn. This is the only boss on my map. I'm trying to branch out towards it and I end up doing another node, and then this node spawns in the way of my entire node pathing. So now I have to clear this node off and then make sure it decays, which it currently hasn't because I've run another zone. And then after I did that, this one spawned over here in the way of this, so then that means I have to go all the way around this mod. God forbid I run another node, this entire thing just gets cancelled out altogether, I can't get there anymore. If that happens, yeah, I'm fucked. But basically, after all the stuff was fixed with the patch, there is still one problem. When you get to these nodes, the end sort of nodes, if you go into them, you no longer get ported back out to your next area. So let's say you go into this, you then click the end stabilizer, as it were. You are stuck in that stabilizer, you have to go all the way back to your Nexus. So what you have to do is actually avoid clicking your stabilizer by running in, finding the chests, looting all the shit you want to do, and then just jump straight back into the blue, and it'll port you back to the start of your bridge over here, at which point you can then keep moving around back, forth, wherever you need to. If you actually hit the stabilizer, you are stuck at the end of your zone and you have to start again and waste your entire path that you've done. Now this is confusing as fuck if from someone going to someone that maybe hasn't done all of this or understood all of this, but to someone like me who has gone through all of this system, you can kind of understand what I'm talking about. But basically, it's just too convoluted and too unintuitive to use and not very fun. You have to do way too much figuring out, way too much studying, way too much effort to not really get that much reward, and ultimately it doesn't really feel like you're playing a game anymore because it's too much complexity, I think, for complexity's sake. At least in my opinion, it just doesn't feel right. This game's very complex, right? It's the reason that a lot of us play it. It's the reason that a lot of us want to make builds and mess around with stuff. It's complex. There's lots of gear choices, lots of gem choices, passive tree choices. You spend a lot of time planning out your character and then fine-tuning it and trying to make sense of this whole thing, that you don't really want to also do that in the game as well. You don't want to just run along and all of a sudden have to interact very slowly and painfully with a mechanic whereby you eventually start to kill stuff and maybe you get some loot. That's not very fun, and that's why some of the most popular leagues out there have just been oh shit, here's a pile of extra monsters, kill them. Yay, that was fun. Oh, some loot, cool. That's basically summing up the entirety of the most popular leagues out there. And to specifically go over it and make an example of that, there's all the past leagues, right? A lot of them in the early days were pretty simple, just here's an extra modifier, the entire zone has a bit of something, there's maybe a box to click. They were pretty simple, and they get more complicated and they build more into these league mechanics as time goes on, and it really shows that some of them become just truly another huge piece of content and so much fun and something completely unexpected, right? When we come across, let's say, for example, Essence, you just click some monsters and then you kill them. It's a bit of a tougher encounter, and then you get an exact direct reward in the form of some piece of loot to craft with. That's pretty simple, and it was fairly popular at the time, let's say. Then Breach comes along, and that really changed the game. That's a lot of the time referenced as people's favorite league. What is that one? You touch a thing, and then a circle opens, and there's lots of monsters. Monsters drop loot. Eventually, you just go into a bigger zone where you fight through a tunnel kind of thing, and you get a boss and then loot. That's it. And we loved the shit out of that league. That was an amazing league. That's all it took. So then you get Legacy, which combines all the other leagues, and you get to pick and choose which league you might want to interact with the most. That's kind of what the Nexus feels like, but a much more complicated system, right? You can kind of pick and choose where you're going, what nodes you're going to, but it's just so much harder than find a league stone and put it in the map. That was amazing, right? That was one of our favorite leagues. Harbinger, people didn't necessarily like, but that's because we didn't really get too much new content, but it's, monsters spawn, they give you other stuff and loot. Abyss, that was one of the most popular leagues as well. Find a crack in the ground, follow this line, kill stuff, loot. That was pretty goddamn good. Bestiary, not a lot of people loved that one too much, but it was still, I think, overall a good mechanic, and especially the way it's implemented now in the game. You find a monster, and maybe you kill him, maybe you capture him, loot. At the end of the day, you can maybe craft some stuff very simply. Incursion, find a thing, enter it, make one of two choices, whether you're going left or right, killing something, and then lots of monsters, loot. Delve was the most complicated of this lot, kind of like a Nexus, right? But there's just lots of monsters, lots of loot, and it's pretty straightforward. You're just going down, you're upgrading your cart however you need to, but ultimately just lots of loot. And I can sum it up by saying that Nexus is kind of like Delve if you had to dig every step of the way yourself, right? If you had to plan out your path and then manually dig through that bitch and eventually get somewhere. The Nexus would make more sense if it was kind of in a Delve sort of system where it's just showing you stuff that you can go or, you know, certain rewards, and you just go through it instead of placing these memories, turning around, activating the memory, going forward, clearing, the entire zone's crumbling on you. Oh shit, you fucked up, you're back to the start, you got to replace that memory, you then got to go through it. You then got to go back to your Nexus to unload. You then got to go back into that. You then got to press the next memory, go through. Oh shit, that memory modifier was bad. Oh no, another thing spawned and it blocked my entire path. Oh no, I don't have the right memory things. I have to go run a bunch of maps and see if I can get the right ones to go to the next zone. Yeah. There's a lot of that going on, which does kind of bring me to a point I want to say. A lot of the time, you just don't have the right things, right? You want to go to a certain node and you just don't have the right connections. And oftentimes that's made it so that I just have to play maps for like 3 or 4 hours. I want to do my Nexus. I want to try and play around with it. I want to get to a certain node. I just have to map for a few hours until I get all the right stuff. And it just doesn't really flow in that way. So at the end of the day, it just becomes about trying to do some little memory things while doing your map, and it just is a bit of an additional breach league, I guess. You know, Kavas or Zana's like, check out this memory. You zone in, you kill a bunch of stuff, bit of loot drops out, you go along your merry way. Once you've established a Nexus like this, it can be, you know, somewhat entertaining to go for it. Bosses, there might be some good loot, but it definitely feels like too much work. Like, that's the key word here. It's just work, right? Learning the system, establishing the system, and getting anything out of the system is basically work. Now, I don't want to discourage you from playing the game. I know it's kind of a negative video, but like I said, I have been loving my Divine Ire. All of the new skills so far have looked really good and fun, and there is definitely enough content in this game right now to do outside of the league that you should be able to have plenty of fun in this league without having to entirely rely on the league mechanic. And that is basically what I've said before this league mechanic came out, that people are saying, what are you most looking forward to? Or, you know, what do you really want to see in this new league? And as always, I say that I want to see the new skills. I want to play around with the new stuff that comes out like that, because that's the reliable stuff, and that is usually the stuff that they hit home runs on, as opposed to league mechanics, which can be a bit hit or miss. And at this point, there is definitely enough in this game that you can go like interact with so much other cool fun shit and have more than enough to do, that you don't have to put all the pressure onto the league mechanic as to whether or not you're having fun in the league, because a lot of the time I don't even have time for my Nexus. I sometimes have an entire incursion temple up. I've got a bunch of sulfide I need to run and do my delve. I need to craft some stuff in the menagerie. I've got to progress my Atlas, which takes a bloody long time now because of all that other side content. You don't have to focus entirely on the league mechanic. Currently, yes, there are some problems with betrayal. They have identified those and said they're trying to fix them, because if you're one of the people getting heavily affected by frame drops when betrayal stuff spawns, yes, that totally sucks, and I get that. That's something they're trying to fix as soon as they can, and I'd take their word for it that they're trying to fix it. It's in their interest for you to be playing the game, so don't think it out of spite they're just being lazy or something and not fixing it, or don't care about the betrayal stuff affecting your frames. Trust me, they are trying to fix that because they want you to play the game and love it enough to play the next league as well. But besides that, yes, Syndicate also does, I think, spawn nowhere near enough at the moment. I'm at 48% safe house on this character, like basically 48 hours into it, right? More than that. It's not showing up enough, true, and I think that'll probably be fixed within the next few weeks, which obviously isn't enough if you want to try and enjoy the stuff to the max as early as possible, but, you know, I trust that it will be fixed eventually, and like I said, there is enough out there to still do. It sucks that Betrayal just wasn't implemented as maybe nicely as it could have been, but, you know, is what it is. I'm sure they tried to at least do the things that they could have done about it, maybe just kind of miss the mark here or there. You know, there had to be a lot of focus on this thing, surely, how to release it and optimize it. And yeah, like if it's as tough for us to go through, must have been pretty tough to make and try and make work. In any case, guys, like I said, I think there's still more than enough to enjoy the game. Please don't immediately quit and say, this league mechanic sucks. Try out some stuff. The new skills are a lot of fun. There's still a lot of fun stuff in the game. It's just that Synthesis itself and the mechanic kind of missed the mark. I haven't really enjoyed every aspect of trying to make this work, but I'm at a stage where I'm having enough fun with the mechanic that I can kind of appreciate it for what it is, but for the most part, I'm still playing for every other reason in this game, and I hope you are too. So thank you very much for watching. Hope you can agree with some of this. I know it's been a bit of a mess of a rant, but it's what I got, so thank you very much, and see you next time.